Hello Game Boys and Game Girls, I'm the Game Boy Guru, and welcome to another pickups video. Or should I say, a half pickups, half arrivals video. Well anyway, this is new stuff that I got, so let's take a look. I got some Game Boy Color games. I got Gex 3 Deep Pocket Gecko. Got a Game Boy Color version of Rayman. 007, The World Is Not Enough. Portal Runner. And a new Game Boy game that I didn't have already, Madden 96. I went out and also picked up this awesome t-shirt that you guys will definitely be seeing in a future video, and that is this awesome Atari shirt. Of course has the Atari logo in the rainbow multicolor look that you saw in some of the early Atari 2600 games, so definitely going to be sporting that in a future video. Picked up a couple of Switch games at Best Buy. This one is Soldum, Drop, Connect, Erase, and this is, I guess, loosely related to the Rodland franchise, which was an arcade game and then made its way to the Game Boy. I'm not 100% sure, but I don't believe it got a US release. I think it may have stayed in Japan. But anyway, looks like an interesting puzzle game, similar to Puyo Puyo, but not exactly the same. And of course, I couldn't not get Bayonetta 2. Loved Bayonetta and Bayonetta 2 on the Wii U, and unfortunately, Nintendo didn't see fit to do a physical cartridge release or game card release of the first Bayonetta game, or do a bigger card so that they could put both games on there. But still cool that the first game comes as a download. And so anyway, awesome stuff. Definitely looking forward to playing through that again. My buddy Single Banana at the Single Banana on Twitter hooked me up with a game, messaged me recently and asked me if I had Quake 2 for the PlayStation, and I said no. So he said he would set that aside for me, and he hooked me up with that. And this actually looks, based on the screenshots on the back, looks pretty good. Fairly impressive for the PlayStation, so have to pull that one out and give that a whirl. Another fellow RFGen member hooked me up with a couple of things, and that is Shaggy. He hooked me up with a greatest hits copy of Air Combat for the original PlayStation, the Wii version of Guitar Hero 3 Legends of Rock, which is cool. I got the PlayStation 2 version with the box and the wireless guitar, but I also now have the Guitar Hero Aerosmith box and guitar on the Wii, so it'll be fun to go back and do a little bit more of this with that guitar. He also hooked me up with an original PlayStation. This is, and power cord of course. This is just a standard PlayStation. It's pretty clean, looks good, and this is of course the version that has not only your AV out, but also the serial port and this extra compartment in the back, which is a parallel port. I can get this thing open. It's kind of a difficult proposition. Holy cow. Well, anyway, it's the parallel port in the back. I know there are a couple of accessories that use that. One in particular was like a library internet connectivity deal that came at some point. But anyway, I now have a spare PlayStation, and I think what I might do is there are some videos on YouTube on how to use an Arduino board as essentially a mod chip for the original PlayStation. So I might just see if I can get the stuff that I need to actually make that happen so I can have a modded PlayStation. And then I can start buying Japanese games. So many thanks to Shaggy for that. I also got some Japanese Sega Saturn games via mail order, and so I picked up Sega Ages Volume 1, and that includes 4 classic arcade games, Head On, Pengo, Up and Down, and Flicky. I've played the Genesis version of Flicky on the Sonic's Ultimate Genesis collection, so it'll be interesting to compare with the arcade version. I'd never heard of Up and Down, but it looks kind of an interesting driving or racing game. Pengo, I've never played the arcade version, but I played a PC port, or not really a port, more of like a somebody stole the idea and basically made the exact same game, and it was called Pango. I played a ton of that as a kid, so I'll enjoy going back to Pango. And Head On looks a whole lot like there's a Atari 2600 game that uses the same thing with this grid where you run the cars around and try not to run into each other. So anyway, pretty cool. This does not have the spine card, but everything looks good. Disc is clean, no damage to speak of, so looking forward to checking that one out. I also knocked off one of the shmup desires, I guess you could say, on the Sega Saturn, and that is the Gradius Deluxe Pack. This is complete. It does have the spine card that you can see there, and of course Gradius 2 never got a release of any kind in the United States. The first Gradius got a release on the NES, and then Gradius 2 didn't. It came out on the Famicom in Japan, but did not come to the US. And so the first time we got an arcade port of Gradius 2 was in the Gradius collection for PSP, which I have, and it's great. But this is a legit official way to play arcade ports of both Gradius and Gradius 2 on a TV without having to plug in the PSP and mess around with the resolution stuff. So have this on the Saturn. It also came out on the PlayStation, and then of course I've got Gradius 3 and 4 on PS2 and Gradius 5. So yeah, awesome to have that. I also grabbed what is or has in the past been considered one of the more holy grail Saturn shoot 'em ups. I don't know that it is so much now. It doesn't hold its value at this point like Radiant Silvergun, or it's not prohibitively expensive like let's say Blastwind or something like that. But this is considered more of a holy grail in terms of how good the game is, and that is Tsukio Gorentai, otherwise known as Terra Driver. This was available on both the Saturn and the PlayStation, but from what I understand, the Saturn version is the sought-after and the superior version. It's a vertical shoot 'em up, and it's similar to Galactic Attack on the Saturn, otherwise known as Layer Section or Ray Force, where you've got a targeting reticle that sits out in front of the ship, and you can target enemies and shoot a special weapon at them. But it's a little bit different than that. It's a little bit more complex. It's not just fly over the enemies like that, or like Xevious or something, and target them, and then hit the button to release a laser or missile attack or something. It's a little bit more complicated. I think it uses more of like a field kind of thing, where you can activate a field, tag a bunch of enemies, and then release an attack that'll do damage. And the number of enemies and all of that sort of has to do with the multiplier and the scoring mechanics, I think. Anyway, super happy to have this, and I found it at a ridiculously good price, especially considering that a decade or so ago when I was looking at this before, it went for insane amounts of money. So I got a really good deal on this one. And finally, I got some Game Boy games, but they're not official licensed original Game Boy games. These are new Game Boy indie games. Yes, you heard that right. These are new indie games designed for the Game Boy and released in a physical cartridge format. Everything about these is brand new. So the cases that they're in, the plastic cases, are not official Nintendo or sanctioned cases. These are reprint, so of course they're a little bit rough to get open. These are all released or sold through a company called Cat Skull Games or Cat Skull Electronics. So this is called Sheep It Up, which is sort of an action puzzle game, if you will. There's also, assuming I can get it open, this is called Guns and Riders. A little bit of a classic Atari 2600 style action game. And then this one is Airaki, I think that's how you pronounce it. A-I-R-A-K-I. Airaki. It is a puzzle game that appears to be based on some Egyptian mythology, and it's done by Furtek Software Engineering, it says, and then released by Cat Skull Games. Now, if you look at the web page, this one actually shows up in color, so my guess is it's a game that's compatible with both Game Boy and Game Boy Color, and it has a special palette on the color. But the cool thing is you can see on the label that it actually says DMG-AKR-USA. So they're branding it as though it's an official release, even though it's not, has no Nintendo seal of approval. The top of the cartridge doesn't even say game like a lot of the bootlegs do. It's just completely smooth up here. But the labels are nice, they're glossy, and they look really well done. They're nicely printed. You can tell that it's not done via a professional process like an original Game Boy label would be, but they look nice, and I am looking forward to checking these out. Now, because these are not officially licensed Game Boy games, I'm not going to be covering them in my Dramatic Readings series, simply because, like I say, they're not bootlegs, they're indies, so they were designed for the Game Boy, but my focus is going to be on the official licensed Game Boy library. But I will be covering some unlicensed and bootleg stuff along the way, outside of the Dramatic Readings series. So these will definitely, at some juncture, be looked at, and we'll be taking a look at those. They also included this fun little Cat Skull Electronics sticker, which I thought was kind of cool, some nice pixel art there. And so, anyway, that's what I have picked up or received in the mail over the last couple of weeks. Haven't had a lot of time to go hunting, been working a lot, and also, gaming, trying to get back into that as much as I can now that my new place is kind of starting to come together. I'm still recording re-unboxing videos, and I'm still working on trying to get to where I can ramp back up to start doing the dramatic readings videos again, and also begin to write some Game Boy reviews so that I can start to kind of get in that rhythm as well. But what do you guys think? Anything in here trip your trigger, or anything in here that you guys like? Anyone else besides me into Saturn collecting, or Saturn shoot 'em ups, or shoot 'em ups in general? Let me know. And what do you guys think about these indie Game Boy games? I've got another one that I'm going to be looking at getting here pretty soon. It's actually got a full box and manual and everything, so I'll be happy to show that off once I can get that coming on the way. Make sure you follow me on Twitter at Game Boy Guru. I'll have a link in the description below to my blog where you can read the Game Boy reviews that I talked about before. That's gameboyguru.blogspot.com. Also, make sure you check out Nira and his channel. He provided the Super Mario Land overworld music that excuse me, that I use as the intro for all my videos, and he's got a bunch of other great chiptune and game music covers on there as well, so make sure you go check that out. As always, thanks for watching, thanks for playing, and game on.